Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to keep talking about Russia, about what so-called Russian nationalists think, why they think that, why they keep believing the very popular narratives of the Kremlin, and so on and so forth. Today I wanted to focus on Telegram because I already showed you people, I think, enough screenshots from Instagram. And by the way, basically shortly after the war started, Russia actually blocked Instagram. So a lot of these so-called Russian nationalists were forced to move to Telegram. And they basically created a lot of groups where there just is tons and tons of disinformation. I'm not even talking about misinformation, which is a different concept. I'm specifically talking about disinformation, including fake news. And I'm gonna show you everything right now. I'm gonna translate everything for you. I saw on Instagram the link to the Telegram group created by the same Russian blogger who was writing pro-Kremlin stuff on Instagram. So I went to check her Telegram. What's interesting is that, as you might recall, when I asked her, where do you get your informations? She responded, personally responded to me that she does not trust the media at all. She doesn't trust Russian media, she doesn't trust Western media, none of that. And what I find interesting is that, and you might remember that, I believe I told you, maybe I didn't, that my response to that was that I actually find that a bit hard to believe because your so-called theories are exactly the same theories, the same narratives that one can always hear on Russian state television and on Russian state press. Like exactly the same, all of this anti-Western talk, the theory that America is to blame for the war in Ukraine, that basically America is to blame for most of Russia's problems, and so on and so forth. And as it happens, when I opened her Telegram group, I found that pretty much most of her so-called political posts came from Russian state television, including some of the most popular ones like RIA Novosti. Then there was also a lot from Tsargrad TV. The only Western channel that I found references to, you can guess for yourself, was Fox News. And again, it wasn't even Fox News in the original English, but it was Fox News dubbed in Russian, dubbed over with somebody with a very thick Russian accent on a very low quality type of audio. So there's that. As you can expect, as soon as I said that I wasn't Russian, that I was originally from Europe, and that I also spent a lot of time in the US, a lot of people just automatically started, they definitely started feeling some animosity toward me. And this one person specifically, when I said that, all of the main TV channels in Russia and all of the main newspapers in Russia are controlled by the government, they are owned by the government actually. This one person started saying, oh yeah, I'm sure that only in the US they have a free press, that only in the US they write absolutely the truth about what happens, and so on and so forth. And first of all, I said I never said that. I said that, Russian media is most likely very biased, not just because, as I said, it is effectively controlled and monitored by the Russian government, but also because we are in the middle of a Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And I think this is a pretty universal thing that, when two parts are in a conflict, you cannot really expect any of those parts to be absolutely objective and neutral in the way that they represent what's going on and in the way that they represent what's going on the other side of the conflict. So yeah, that was my answer. And I also said that I specifically provided for these people some lists of what are considered to be the most trustworthy sources of news worldwide. And I'm gonna leave the links to you as well if you're interested. Some of the most common titles that I found were the BBC, the Wall Street Journal was another very popular one. What else? The Associated Press. I also like to regularly check Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch. I really like The Economist, by the way. And lately, I've also had a penchant for the Moscow Times because it's this independent newspaper that it's all in English, so you can easily read it as well. And I just find it very interesting to read articles by Russian people, because of course who better than them can understand what's going on in their country and why it is going on. So I'm actually gonna leave some of the links to some of the most interesting articles that I found in case you're interested. But moving on. So I found myself having to explain what I assume to be some very elementary concepts, including the one that one's opinion is not necessarily truth, and it's definitely not journalism, because somebody sent me a video from, again, Fox News. I think it was Tucker Carlson talking about, I don't even remember. I'm gonna show you the screenshot because I don't quite remember and I don't have it in front of me right now. But after watching it, I said, well, first I would have to watch this in the original English and not like in the Russian dubbed version, because I do not know whether or not this translation is accurate. And secondly, I said, well, this first of all is not journalism, because this man, the host, whatever, is simply expressing an opinion. He is not citing any sources. He is not basing any of his claims and statements on hard evidence or facts. He is just literally just making claims that, that he is not backing in any way. And yeah. And I said, I never took a journalism class in college, but I'm pretty sure that this is journalism 101, that an opinion is not news, that an opinion is not journalism. And this brings me to another very interesting element that came up quite often during this long conversation that I had with these people, which is the claim that some of these people made that, well, you have your own truth and I have mine. There is just one truth. People can have different opinions, but an opinion is not necessarily the truth. For example, stupid example, the sky is blue, and that is a fact, it's the truth. I cannot say that the sky is red and call that my truth, because it is simply not true. And it's very weird, because this really reminded me of 1984, of specifically the 2 + 2 = 5 part from 1984, because as you may recall, if you have read the book, the government, the agents of the government are trying to convince Winston that 2 + 2 = 5, and Winston is like, I just cannot believe that, because that is not the truth. 2 + 2 is not 5, and it's never gonna be 5. And the agents of the government say something like, not only do you have to say this, you actually have to believe this, because this is what the government, the big brother, is telling you, and the big brother, the government, is always right. And when I first read 1984, I thought that it was, just so disturbing, and now it just seems to be so accurate. And I was actually saying to a Russian friend of mine yesterday that I almost believe that if Russian television started saying tomorrow that 2 + 2 = 5, some people would actually believe that, and he agreed with me, so that's where we are. And by the way, another thing that I wanted to mention is, I don't know whether or not I showed this in my last video, because I definitely talked about it in the Russian one. It's this book by Pomerantsev, who is a journalist who was born in the Soviet Union, but he moved to the UK with his family when he was still young, and he basically grew up in the UK, but later on he moved back to Russia. I believe this was in the early 2000s, and he worked for many years for TNT, which is a very famous entertainment channel on Russian television. And he wrote this book called Nothing is True and Everything is Possible, The Surreal Heart of the New Russia. And I just absolutely love it. First of all, he talks about his own personal experience, and he analyzes just how Russian propaganda works, just how it starts with television, and it really pervades every single aspect of television, from the news to entertainment. And yeah, I just really recommend this to anyone. And by the way, something that I found really interesting is that this book is not available in Russian. I believe it was never published in Russia. I couldn't find like a single copy or a single reference to any copy in Russian online. I did find that it was published in Ukrainian, but again, not in Russian. And yeah, although his other books were published in Russian. And so I just wanted to read some very important passages from this book. I already published this on my Instagram, so let's start. In a country covering 9 time zones, 1/6 of the world's landmass, stretching from the Pacific to the Baltic, from the Arctic to the Central Asian deserts, from near medieval villages where people still draw water from wooden wells by hand, through single factory towns and back to the blue glass and steel skyscrapers of the new Moscow, TV is the only force that can unify and rule and bind this country. And then later on the same page, he says, the first thing the president had done when he came to power in the 2000s was to seize control of television. It was television through which the Kremlin decided which politicians it would allow as its puppet opposition, what the country's history and fears and consciousness would be. At the center of the great show is the president himself, created from a no one, a gray fuzz via the power of television, so that he morphs as rapidly as a performance artist among his roles of soldier, lover, bare-chested hunter, businessman, spy, Tsar, Superman. Again, I really recommend this book. There is just so much information in this, so much actual like analytical explanation of why like what's going on in Russia right now is possible, how this whole empire was built. And yeah, so you can see how the very perception of truth is being manipulated. And by the way, I haven't done a full like in-depth research about propaganda and how it works on a specific psychological level. I am planning to do that, but what I wanted to say is that just instinctively, considering all of this, considering all of the information that I have gathered, this actually looks to me like typical gaslighting. I think you are familiar with the term gaslighting in psychology, which is mostly applied to like relationships where you have a manipulative personality, a narcissist in a lot of cases that, you know, manipulates his partner and sort of messes with their head. And by the way, for those who didn't know, the term gaslight actually comes from a film from the 40s. It's a very like Hitchcock type of film. It stars Ingrid Bergman, and it's about this woman who marries this man who's apparently an almost perfect man. and then he slowly starts to convince her that she is going insane by moving things around the house. And one of the things he specifically does is that he keeps messing with the gas level of the lamps in the house. And then he tells her that she has been moving them, that she has regulated them differently. And of course, she doesn't remember that, and she assumes that she is just going insane. And by the way, on top of everything else, that movie is the perfect example of how these kinds of abusive relationships work. And yeah, you should definitely watch it. I'm definitely gonna look more deeply into this, into the connection between gaslighting and propaganda, but in the meantime, so besides what I've already said, which is Russian state news and media, and Fox News, the other source of information that I found in this Telegram group was basically just reposts of what other people have already written, which is basically just it's a long message with different paragraphs claiming a bunch of things. For example, I found one about Zelensky, even containing a quote that he supposedly said, and there were no sources whatsoever, not a single one cited in this entire text, and the administrator of this group simply reposted that from literally somebody else's group. It was not even taken from a newspaper or a news source outlet. It was just reposted from somebody else's personal account. Other people again keep saying, I have relatives in Ukraine that have personally told me what exactly it's going on. But again, whenever either I or Ukrainian people in the chat ask them, where do these people live? Or when we ask for more information, usually we do not receive any. Another point that I wanted to make is that as soon as I said that I was not Russian, that I was, born and raised in Europe, and then also that I have spent six years, I don't know how that came out, that I have spent 6 years in the US, Freudian slip, they immediately started relating to me in a very negative way. For example, this one woman specifically started saying that, oh, and I'm going to translate, I understand everything that you do not understand or don't want to understand or are just simply pretending that you don't understand. And that is your right, but this is the chat of, and she mentioned the administrator. And that is why I am here. I am a patriot of the Rodina. I said in the previous video, it's the word for motherland. And I love my president. As soon as you read statements like this, that I'm a patriot, I love my president, it really doesn't make sense. But again, we just cannot imagine what it's like to be conditioned to such a strong degree from, I believe, for almost your entire life, because I believe these people are in their 20s, maybe 30s, maximum 40s. And then what I encountered, of course, is some good old-fashioned fake news. The first thing that I found was the screenshot from, and it was in Italian, which is the first thing that surprised me, and it's this apparent poll from some Italian TV channel that I have never in my entire life heard of. And I have lived in this country for about 20 years. This poll asks, why do you think that the conflict in Ukraine is still going on? And as you can see, I can translate the whole thing, but basically 42.7% of the people said just such a specific answer, because the US has no interest in ending the war. On the opposite, they have been working for years to start the war. And well, I have been here in Italy for quite a while now, for several months, and not once have I heard such an opinion. Not once. The other very interesting thing that I found is that on Victory Day, which in case you didn't know, this is a very big deal in Russia. It's the anniversary of the defeat of the Nazi army on Russian premises, and it's a very big deal in Russia. Like they have parades, it's a big deal. Okay. On this day, somebody posted what looked like a tweet from the White House saying, and I quote, and I'm gonna show you the screenshot. On May the 8th, 1945, America and Great Britain had victory over the Nazis. Had victory. America's spirit will always win. In the end, that's what happens. And you have the Russian translation on the side. And of course, as soon as I saw this, I did the most logical thing to do, which is to open Google, go on Twitter, look for the official page of the White House, and check all of the posts that had been published that day and even the day before. And I found nothing of the sort. And I honestly would not expect somebody from the White House to make a grammar mistake such as had victory instead of won. So, you know, there's also that on top of everything else. And on the same day, somebody, long text that is not coming from any source whatsoever, is not quoting any source. It's a post that says that today, the Secretary of the United States, Blinken, I think his name is Anthony Blinken, I wasn't even familiar with him, he declared that the Nazis were defeated by the United States and Great Britain, who moved forward the spirit of freedom. And you know, basically, they are claiming that that Blinken, you know, officially denied that the USSR had anything to do in helping defeating Nazi Germany. And again, I went to look for Blinken's statement online, and I showed these people the entire text. As you can guess, there was absolutely nothing of the kind in his official press release. What he actually said is, and I quote, "The people of the United States joined with brave citizens of many other countries who fought courageously on all fronts in Europe to turn back the brutal Nazi onslaught." This is an example of absolutely fake news. And yeah, by the way, what I wanted to say is that what these nationalists believe, and even the way that they generally think and express what they think, it really reminded me of Trump supporters. Like, it really brought me back to 2016, when, you know that ever since that year, we have been dealing with things such as fake news, alternative facts, post-truth era, and all of that. So it's obviously not just Russia's problem. This really reminded me of Trump supporters, because again, you have some very similar patterns here. You have the pattern of this great patriotism. That means that if you say anything critical about America in any way, then you are anti-American and all of that. And then, you know, there's this, you know, attachment to very old values, this, you know, impression that the president has to be like this strong, you know, masculine leader. Again, this is something that somebody actually wrote. The West envies us because we have Putin, who is such a strong leader that everyone respects. And again, I couldn't help but, you know, writing in response to this person that this is actually like a typical fascist concept. If you remember, like Benito Mussolini, and not only his personality but also, you know, his core beliefs, they all centered around the idea of, the very strong man, the very head of the family that everybody had to respect, who had to be in a very good physical shape, who just had to be, so masculine. It's interesting, again, that, it's reflected in both what these people think and in what Trump supporters think.